Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake, Scott, Ben Anderson. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I like Credence. Wouldn't hold out much hope for the Credence, though. How's it going over there? Did you have a good weekend?
It's fast, but it was good.
It was a blur? First Jazz preseason game?
Jazz preseason game Friday. Watched a little hockey over the weekend. Yeah, it's just busy. It's a busy season for us.
It is.
Yeah, I was actually, as much as I bemoaned it all week that there was no Utah and BYU game, I would have not had any time Saturday. So I was actually okay that those two things weren't going on. And then I'm sure the people who are over there at the Delta Center right now, I'm sure you saw driving in, they've got Third West blocked off between, what is that, North Temple, or is that South Temple and First South? Uh-huh. Third West is all blocked off there in front of the east side of the Delta Center because they're getting ready for this concert that they're putting on Tuesday night, and ESPN's going to be here for the Utah Hockey Club. They had to do the people who put the floor together had to do Jazz game Friday, UFC Saturday, tear it all up, do a Jazz game tonight, hockey tomorrow, but in between, they're setting up an entire concert, ESPN inaugural NHL season kickoff over there. So if I'm complaining about my weekend being busy, they certainly have bigger issues.
I've had the pleasure of watching them do that a bunch of times, break down stuff, set up stuff. I'm never not amazed. Like Monster Truck alone, the amount of dirt that they're bringing in there is pretty remarkable. But what you're talking about, Ben, is big time, big market sports. You know, you're breaking it down, you're setting it up. Everybody goes, wow, how do they do that? And it's like, because we're in big time sports, and this is what big time sports markets do.
So you have to do.
Right.
You have to be able to do that. If you can't do that, you can't host. And
I have no idea how they get some of that concert stuff up in a month. I mean, you've seen some of the elaborate things that the artists are doing these days. It's bananas. And it's like whoop up, whoop down.
Yeah.
Basketball tonight.
It's a machine.
It's wild.
Yep, it's a machine. So it's impressive, all the things that they're able to do, and I'm amazed it's been as flawless as it has. And again, that's from our perspective. I'm sure behind the scenes they're constantly putting out fires, and it feels like a stress case. The fact is, once the lights go down and the game turns on, it's been easy to watch, and that's tough to do.
All right, Ben, two quick observations from my weekend.
Okay.
One I feel is necessary, which I'll get to in a second. But first is I just want to say how nice it was to see everyone. And by everyone, I not only mean our listeners, but everybody in our community up Little Cottonwood Canyon this weekend.
I bet. You guys go see the colors?
It was nice to see everyone because I've never seen that canyon packed like that.
Was it Oktoberfest?
For a ski, I've never seen it for a ski day.
Okay.
Let alone, it was Oktoberfest up Little Cottonwood Canyon. I heard Big Cottonwood Canyon was nuts too. I think, I guess likely all the canyons were probably this weekend. But I'm telling you, dude, backed up all the way to the bottom of the canyon without, an accident or anything. That was just the traffic. Bananas. So anyway, it was nice to see everyone.
Hope you were up there.
Second of all, I went to my daughter's soccer game, and I was talking to one of the dads there, very nice fellow, and he said, my dad told me to tell that you talk about the team or, your experience or whatever, and that he wanted to know which parents you're fist fighting.
Oh, the soccer team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel it really necessary to one say that I'm sure his dad is joking and buys into my humor, but I do feel it necessary now to be like, I'm not actually fist fighting parents.
The goalkeeper's parents.
And all the other parents are very lovely people who I have no interest in fist fighting at any time.
You don't want to be fist fought. Don't let your 7-year-old let a ball go into the back of the net.
Parents stopped showing up to the games because they were afraid Jake Scott was going to fight them.
Yeah. And again, I think that his dad gets it and is just playing along with the humor. But I did think, I need to tell people I'm not actually doing that.
Correct.
And not looking to do that. I'm just laying low.
Bring donuts or something to the next game, like a peace offering.
Be nice and be like, I'm just joking. It's I'm prone to hyperbole a little bit.
A Hertz donut. Uppercut.
I'm not actually looking to.
Yeah, I got a box of donuts for you.
Got to tell you, though, I'm loving that this warmer weather is extending into soccer season.
Yeah, I bet that's nice.
Like you've been there, I'm sure, where it's a random Saturday in like early October, and it's like we're doing this in snow, huh?
Well, spring baseball starts pretty early.
Yeah,
It
it's
is really cold still. So yeah,
it's
I've done
either
that.
growing up playing baseball in this town. Spring was so the worst because it was either just wonderful or it was snowing. And coaches are tough. You know, they're like, we don't care. You're taking batting practice. It's like, well, it really hurts.
Yeah.
And they say, well, suck it up.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I left my batting gloves at home. They said, well, not my problem. Personal experience.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm enjoying this weather for that. Like, I'm a proud parent. I'll be out there, rain or shine, Ben. I know you would do the same, but I prefer the shine. Look at Christian rocking his donks.
Well, they're playing well all of a sudden.
Over. It's what team did they beat, Ben?
Lloyd's Raiders.
Exactly, Lloyd's Raiders. So he's coming in, and he's rubbing Lloyd's nose in it.
Well, Scotty's going to be excited too, so Lloyd's going to get it throughout the day.
Which is great.
JJ's also a Raiders guy.
I do not root for
Broncos guy.
I do not root for the Donks in any way, shape, or form. But I don't hate it that Lloyd's having a bad day.
He's a Raiders fan. He's always having a bad
right.
day. When was the last time he wasn't having a bad day?
What a dreadful franchise. I mean, look at the Jets, too. I mean, it's the Jets, the Raiders, just these franchises are just dreadful. Yeah, let's hire Antonio Pierce. I told you, I tried to jump on board with the Raiders. I really did. I like that they're in Vegas. I like Vegas. What a terrible franchise. Just terrible.
The video, unrelated to the Raiders, but you brought up the Jets, of Aaron Rodgers crawling on the ground is an all-time great sports video. The one of him where he's been lit up so many times by opposing defensive lines because the offensive line there is just awful. It does really validate everything, every complaint everybody had about Zach Wilson's tenure in New York. Not his fault, but the fact that he just rarely had any time. It's amazing he can still walk because they're going to push the limits with Aaron Rodgers. But him on the sideline, slowly crawling, will be what we remember about Aaron Rodgers' tenure in New York, which is crazy because we also have a video of him carrying the American flag out and then blowing his Achilles 5 minutes later.
Remember when, I'm going to rewind a year and a half now, when the Jets were going on Hard Knocks, and we talked about whether or not we thought Aaron Rodgers would embrace it or not. And I thought he would not agree to be a part of it whatsoever.
You're going to not know he's on the team.
Yep. And it was the opposite, right? Where the whole thing was about him. And, of course, we reference it often. We laugh because it was all insults to Zach Wilson. But what it did do is build this narrative that the Jets were actually good and that the only problem – and we could even tie this locally with Isaac Wilson, that the Jets were actually good and that the problem is that Aaron Rodgers only made it 3 plays into the season. And the truth probably was way more in the middle, that the team is super flawed, but not terrible. Like the Jets should be better now, right? I mean, they should be a better team, I would say.
You would think.
But it wasn't all Zach's fault. You know what I mean? And I do think Isaac, it's not all his fault they lost Arizona. It's not. And I don't think it's a given that they would have beaten Arizona if Cam Rising were the quarterback, because other things were really significantly wrong. And Cam Rising or not, they've never been good in short yardage if you want to pin it down to a couple of plays, which I never like to do, but there it is. So I feel bad for Zach. I really hope, speaking of the Donks, he gets another bite at the apple, because I like, if Sean Payton would have coached him from the beginning of his career, would it be a different story?
Probably.
You know?
Probably.
As long as Sean Payton weren't coaching the Jets, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The cursed franchise.
Would you rather go, if you were a quarterback, would you rather go play for the Jets or the Bears?
Bears.
Bears have a similar problem with quarterbacks.
What about the Browns?
Yeah, Browns are pretty cursed too.
Yeah, I guess the Bears?
Bears.
God, that's a tough choice.
Like, Jay Cutler was okay for a while. Like, he was a respectable quarterback for a while. So, And that's not something you can say the Jets have had in a long time. Jay Cutler, how many Pro Bowls did he make in Chicago? Probably 3.
Pro Bowls don't count.
But that was before. That was actually when there was a little bit more legitimacy to Pro Bowls. But he was okay. Jay Cutler probably made 3 Pro Bowls in Chicago.
I remember him riding that bike in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Where everybody questioned whether or not he wanted to be there. But anyway.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
And you can't say that about the Jets. You can't say it about the Browns. So, yeah. Give me the Bears.
Not to get too off track, but how about Deshaun Watson forgetting how to play football?
Yeah.
Like, just now everybody's like, I don't think this guy can play.
Well, he got obsessed with his distractions off the field and focused more on that than he did football, and it's really hard to be a good football player. And that's totally on him.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. It's all on him. It has me, though, questioning whether or not he was that good to begin with.
He was pretty impressive when he was at Clemson. Now, Clemson, those teams were loaded, you know.
Yeah.
And he was better with Houston than he was in Cleveland.
Well, yeah, I had him on my fantasy team one year. I know he produced, but Houston actually turns out to be that young roster was pretty good. Like, Houston's roster is pretty good.
By the way, Jay Cutler only 1 Pro Bowl, and ironically, it happened in Denver.
Whoops. Till he was traded for Kyle Orton.
Then he went to Chicago and was fine, but certainly was not. Anyways.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you're propping up Jay Cutler as your example of quarterback success, then really, I mean, the Jets are propping up Mark Sanchez for the same reason.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean that's your comp between the two spots. And my thought for the Browns was maybe it's Joe Flacco, who played 8 games and was better than expected.
God, they've had a lot of bad quarterbacks. It's pretty amazing, that franchise.
Yeah.
Kind of deserve what they get, I suppose. No?
No, absolutely right. It's the
NFL is funny. Would you say that sport is the easiest to pull it out of the cellar? Because I would say, yeah. It's the easy, like maybe not get over the top, but I'm talking about pulling it out of the cellar. Like not being the worst team in the league overnight. The NFL is by far the easiest.
It has the most parity.
So to be like just the dregs forever is really difficult to do, I would argue. You have to hire a lot of bozos to be that bad for that long. Like the NBA, Phoenix misses on like 5 draft picks in a row, and they're a desert for a decade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The NFL, you can have a decent free agency and a good draft and find a decent quarterback, and all of a sudden you're a playoff team.
Yeah. Oh, you can get a veteran okay quarterback and be 3-2 through 5 weeks.
Look at Sam Darnold.
Yeah, exactly right.
And the Vikings.
Exactly right. Yeah,
but the Vikings, you're not going to bet on them to get over the top because it takes a little more in the recipe to do that, probably.
You need a superstar quarterback to win it all.
Most of the time.
But you should be close to 500 with average level quarterback Sam Darnold.
The Vikings are going to win their division.
Derek Carr right now has the Saints at 500. They play tonight, right? They're 2-2. You should be able to manage 2-2. Unless it's like an obvious, we're totally starting over.
It shouldn't be possible to be the worst in the league for decades in football.
I agree with you. It takes real incompetence, and that incompetence has to start at the top, and then it has to be toxic from top to bottom. It has to permeate everything.
Even the Panthers made 2 Super Bowls.
I don't know. It's interesting, and you know, there's a much bigger conversation than we have time to have in this segment, but the Coyotes very much were that in the NHL. They were the laughingstock of the NHL. They'd been a joke. They'd had a bunch of different owners. They've had different GMs. They've had legends like Wayne Gretzky come in and both be a part of ownership and be the head coach. They've had veteran players. They've had young players. They've traded good players. They've kind of done everything wrong. And they move towns, and they get a new owner, and it feels like there's some real rejuvenation. Now, they've played, 6 preseason games? We don't know if it's actually going to translate into the regular season, but it feels like there's a lot of juice. So is it as simple as that? And what do you learn from an organization or a franchise when they change cities and change ownership if all of a sudden everything gets better?
I think there is a thing in franchises with stability all the way down. I think the Jazz actually have proven that over their existence. Like that, there is a thing to stability. It doesn't mean that you can't be a wingnut owner and then surround yourself with the right people and be like, I would argue that Bob Kraft is kind of a wingnut owner. but he got paired accidentally with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. And I mean accidentally.
Yeah.
But was smart enough not to screw it up until the end, of course.
Yeah.
Arguably a few years before the end, but until the end, of course, right? I think that Phoenix still has bad ownership, and they obviously had really bad ownership before.
You talking about the Suns?
The Suns.
It's ironic because I hung out with a girl who works for the Suns over the weekend, who is on the social media side basically.
Yeah.
And was still talking about how it's a pretty toxic culture.
But Jason Jones? James Jones. Thank you. I knew that wasn't right. The GM. I think he's pretty solid.
He's very smart.
Yeah, I think he's pretty solid, but the ownership isn't necessarily the best.
Sarver was terrible. Ishbia is better than Sarver, but immediately when he came in, he stopped listening to his smart people, which is James Jones might have been the smartest person in the organization.
Because he brought in the ultimate Rasputin.
Zeke.
He brought in Zeke, Isaiah Thomas. Oh, yeah. Atlanta. But that doesn't mean that Phoenix hasn't had some success, even though it hasn't been the most stable place in the world. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely.
But you look at most sane franchises, stability really matters. I actually think the Lakers really are suffering from a lack of stability when the old man died.
Yeah.
When Jerry passed.
And was a very good owner.
I mean, kind of a weird, but really good for that market and that franchise.
And where I'll give him credit is clearly you don't win just because you're in L.A., because if that was the case, the Clippers would win.
Right. I mean, you have to be bold and make the right choices and those sorts of things. But he was stability. He was the Lakers. He was stability. And the kids don't have it. And I don't think Jeannie has it either. Her behavior with LeBron, I think, has been. Did you see that? Man, we've been all over the place. I apologize. But did you see the reports coming out that, and LeBron pushed back against it, I guess, but that the reason he picked the Lakers is because of how they handled the Kobe thing on the way out the door, implying, and I think it was Ramona Shelburne who reported it, but basically implying like, I'm going to take this franchise for every penny until I'm like 45. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he pushed back against that. But I actually don't think that is entirely wrong. I mean, maybe I'm giving LeBron more credit but he's a manipulative guy. I don't think there's any arguing of that. And I think he saw an ownership group that he could be like, well, I can.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to draft Bronny. I tell you that.
Right.
Let me tell you that.
I'd recognize that. Yeah.
Don't you think?
I believe that. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't count the Mickey Mouse title.
Okay.
I mean, I guess the record books are going to count it. But if you're looking to prove success of the kids, the second generation, prove success of their I don't think they've done it.
Well, it's certainly not the level of their father.
To the level of Ryan Smith, even.
They've certainly done less with more.
Yeah, okay, that's nicely put.
Yeah, they've done less with more.
Including LeBron's whole tenure. I think I remember when LeBron first started and they had all these young players, including Kyle Kuzma and who else? Brandon Ingram and
Julius Randle.
All these players, and it was like Lonzo, who actually still had value at the time. And it was like, okay, it's a tryout for LeBron. And then what are they going to do with these assets? And the truth is they got swindled for Anthony Davis and then a whole lot of nothing. Like a whole lot of nothing.
They got Anthony Davis, but yeah.
And then they spent it all early. And the last couple of years, they've been like, let's give Rusty a shot.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yep, they are.
So I think if the point of the conversation is of, like, can the Utah Hockey Club turn it around with new ownership and, in my opinion, stability, which is kind of why I like that they brought the GM and the coach and those sorts of things, and you can kind of meld, and we all can see it, right? I'm sure people who deal with corporate mergers could tell you all about this sort of thing, but you integrate it in, you provide a stable situation, and you essentially start anew. And like a lot of companies that are trying to ditch their bad reputation, you slap a new brand on it.
Yeah.
And you say, do you remember when we were the Coyotes? And then when they say no, you say, good, we don't either.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that was my long-winded point. We have tickets to give away, huh, Christian? Man, coming up tomorrow on the day?
We're giving the tickets away tomorrow, or we're giving the tickets away for tomorrow's game?
Giving the tickets away tomorrow, Jake is going to tell you how you can win them.
Thank you for clarifying.
The Utah Hockey Club is playing its first ever home game, and the KSL Sports Zone wants to send you. Listen, coming up tomorrow, that would be October the 8th, Christian, in case you were wondering, during Hans and Scotty to Win. Tune in at 2 p.m. To the interview with Utah Hockey Club GM Bill Armstrong. Listen for the keyword Keller, be caller number 12, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the Utah Hockey Club versus the Chicago Blackhawks at Delta Center October 8th. Again, listen to the KSL Sports on the radio home of the Utah Hockey Club tomorrow for your chance to win.
Good job. Tomorrow.
I got through it.
Tomorrow.
Tickets and the game both tomorrow.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Giving tickets away tomorrow for a game today would be horrible.
Would not make any sense.
Horrible.
More Jake and Ben coming up next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Don't miss your chance to win big every week. This week on Win Ticket Wednesday, you can win a pair of tickets to go see RSL take on Vancouver Whitecaps FC at America First Field on October 19th. Listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day on Wednesday for your chance to win. Time for top 3 stories of the day. KSLSports.com, brought to you by J. Brooks Jewelers. 2 locations to serve you. One on Winchester Street across from Fashion Place Mall. The other at Traverse Mountain in Lehigh. Ben, real quick, our armpits showing highlights from game day at Cal this weekend. That was my biggest surprise at the weekend, that anyone from Cal showed up for that. There's so lack of enthusiasm for football and sports on that campus. I was actually shocked. I thought it was going to be 2 nerds just.
Have you seen their big Twitter movement?
The woke, not
yeah, they've
Coke
really
or whatever.
leaned into we're the woke school in the ACC, and have been really funny about it. And like the entire community has wrapped around it. That's like the power of the viral sensation that has, made fans turn out at least somewhat to the games. And then we'll get to it coming up at number 2, but almost had them on the ropes.
Normally they don't. I mean, we've seen Utah in the Pac-12 for 10 years. Normally they won't even cross the street to watch a little Cal football. All of a sudden they're showing up.
They're in.
And that's early on the West Coast too. You have to be up and going.
Yeah, you're right.
So I was shocked that there was any sort of turnout whatsoever. So good for Cal, I guess.
Yep.
All right, where are we starting today, Christian?
Number 1, BYU to host Big Noon Kickoff.
That's pretty awesome.
In Provo is enormous. BYU has as good a resume as anybody in the country this year. They're up number 14 in the AP poll. They've got wins over a ranked team in SMU. I know SMU wasn't ranked when they played them.
They're ranked now. That's a good win.
Yeah, it's a very good win on the road. So BYU has 2 good wins and a chance to get a 3rd good win at home over Arizona that I don't know what to make of. And I continue to not know what to make of our local schools, other than I think BYU is very good, and I have no idea what to make of Utah's schedule. But Big Noon Saturday coming up on Saturday is very cool.
It begs the question, what kind of reception is Urbo going to get down there?
Poor.
How's that going to go?
Very badly.
You think?
Yeah.
Not enough time has passed?
No.
Herb can't go in there and shake some hands and wave at the crowd a couple of times, get everybody on his side. I mean,
what Urban's good at,
very charismatic fella.
He's good at playing this up. That's why he's pretty good on TV. He's good at playing this up. So he will lean into it, continue to make BYU the bad guy, and that's a fun part of college football because I don't think he does it with all that much vitriol. I know there were some who will complain and be frustrated by it. That's the magic of college football, and he leans into it, and he's good at it.
You know what's funny? His one win in Provo, Ben, may have been the most un-Urban Meyer-like game ever. Because he was 2-0 against BYU, right? Beat him in 2004. That was at Rice-Eccles Stadium, Gary Croton's last game. And then beat him in 2003. Ben, do you remember the final?
Was it 3-0?
3-0. It was like wind chill below 0 or something like that. When the sun finally came out enough for Utah to make a field goal. BYU's first shutout in like 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Just the worst game ever played.
Barn burner. We might get a repeat this year.
Everybody thinks of Urban, stomping teams and scoring 40 points and all this stuff, throughout his career. And his one win in Provo was just a weather phenomenon.
Arguably the worst game in the history of the rivalry.
In the history of the rivalry. If it weren't close, it wouldn't have been worth watching.
Yeah.
3-0. That's rough. Anyway, I think it's cool. I think it's cool. BYU's getting some run. And the first national pregame show in Provo since 2009 when game day came for BYU TCU.
And I didn't see anything from Arizona over the weekend that made me think they were going to be able to come into Provo and get a win.
I'm excited for that. It's going to be a great game.
Agreed.
And it's 2 o'clock on Big Fox.
What you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what's next?
Number 2, we had an upset-filled weekend of college football.
We billed this as one of the worst weekends in college football, because neither BYU nor Utah were playing. And then we looked at the rest of the games. We just thought, these are going to be blowouts up and down the fight card.
Turned out to be kind of wild.
It was an awesome weekend. Yeah, tons of great games. And it started on Friday night with Syracuse coming back to beat UNLV and a taste of things to come. And then, man, Vandy beating Alabama. Alabama's safety or cornerback just losing his mind on the field over the last drive. It was a great time. Arkansas beats Tennessee. There was just a lot of good games to watch. And then we talked about Cal-Miami came down to the very last minute.
In Miami, the refs fix another one for him. So can I tell you what's funny? As somebody who, last weekend was in Nashville, Vandy beats Alabama. And I don't know, Ben, if you saw the videos of the goalposts marching their way up Broadway. So for those people who haven't been to Nashville, that area is the bachelorette party capital of the world.
Okay.
I'm telling you, every probably third person is with a bachelorette party. It's just it's that kind of vibe. They like singing along with those country songs. Having just been there, I can't imagine how hilarious it would be to see a bunch of bachelorette parties that have no idea that a football game just happened, seeing what's this commotion outside?
It's that large yellow metal post that they're carrying around.
Let me take a break from Friends in Low Places again for a second here and see what on earth is going on. And then they throw it into the river. Anyway, I just found that concept funny. Did you see Lane Kiffin, the Lane Train, stop his press conference?
I didn't.
To see his press conference was happening at the end of the game, and he stopped it and said what Alabama has 2 timeouts, right?
Started coaching.
Because then he said we're witnessing a once in a lifetime thing. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he referred to it.
Well, Vandy is the joke of the SEC. And
they
has
are.
been for a very long time. So to not just beat Alabama, but beat number 1 ranked Alabama, who is fresh off of stomping Georgia, was huge for them. So very cool for Vanderbilt. Washington gets their first big win in the Big Ten. They beat Michigan. Minnesota continues to embarrass USC, who is now 1-2 in Big Ten play after their hot start beating LSU. We thought, maybe Stinkin' Riley's got this USC team fixed. No, he does not. They're 3-2.
So Saturday night, I actually got an opportunity to watch some college football with my buddies at a place. Well, 2 buddies anyway. We're at a place where it was on. The people at the table right next to us, Ben. Tennessee Volunteers fans.
Oh, no.
It was the 4th quarter. And I felt bad for this poor woman who was there because she couldn't watch it. The last play of the game, she was like, I just can't watch this. And walked out into the hall. And the guy was so bent out of shape by the end. I was like, man, I don't blame you. You've been waiting a while to be good again.
To be relevant.
Yeah.
And you're suddenly irrelevant.
And a loss to Arkansas of all teams.
Anyways, fun weekend. And another big weekend coming up for our local team. So excited to have our local teams back.
Hey, speaking of, BYU, glad we had them on the top of our power poll last week.
Yeah.
Speaking of the resume thing.
Yeah.
We were ahead of that game. All right, next.
Number 3, takeaways from the first little bit of Jazz preseason action.
Lowry's really good. I did think Keontae looked better. Keontae George was just in super control of the game and was really playing point guard and looked like a point guard and looked fine. He had a couple of disastrous defensive possessions that even drew a rage timeout from Will Hardy because he just didn't guard the 5'10" point guard for the New Zealand Breakers. But
I love that term. Rage timeout?
Oh, he did,
absolutely. I don't know if I've heard that. I love that.
Keontae did not leave his feet for this 5'10" guy to shoot a 12-footer. And Will just walked out on the floor just you know
rage
what you did.
Timeout.
You know what you did. I don't even have to come over to you. You know that's completely unacceptable. Otherwise, Johnny Juzang was great. Hit 5 threes in the game. Came out in the 3rd quarter, didn't play in the first half, and was really good. We've talked so much about, these 7 guys aged 23 and under that are on the roster, Walker Kessler, and then the 3 first-round picks last year and the 3 draft picks this year. Johnny Juzang, I know he's undrafted, but he's also only 23 years old and has really climbed. He's really improved his game. He's changed who he was from UCLA. He might be somebody who factors in, and namely because he's on the most team-friendly contract in the NBA. He's on a 4-year deal. Only the first year's guaranteed, and the next 3 are all minimums. So it's really easy to keep him around.
Hey, pretty sweet.
But if you can step in and hit 5 threes any point in your career, in a game, you're in good shape. And this is not the first time he's done it. I know it was preseason, but this is not the first time he's done it. Those guys have value. Whether you have, you're a throw into a trade or you end up being on the team the next time the Jazz are good. And, he's 25, 26 at that point, and the Jazz are trying to make the playoffs, and you've got a dynamite three-point shooter. There might be a little more to Johnny Juzang there than he's been given credit for.
And then if they can turn him into a dirty player so he's not such a liability on defense.
Sure.
Then you've really got something on your hands.
But, he's better defensively than Bryce Sensabaugh is.
Yeah, no.
He's better than Keontae is.
I'm more joking. But we asked him the question when we sat down with him in media day. We said, human beings aren't supposed to shoot it that well.
Yeah.
There aren't that many of them that shoot it that well. So teams are looking for a reason to play the guy who shoots it that well. So.
And you talk to him. He's got real legitimate NBA size. He's not.
Yeah, he's big.
He's not a little guy who shoots the ball well.
No.
He's a real 6'7" shooter who moves well and kind of has some just basic understanding of the game so he can do more than just stand still and shoot.
A guy that has real value in this league.
Cody Williams looked good. Had a nice poster dunk. He's just got to get stronger. I thought all the young guys looked pretty good, in all honesty.
I thought
Taylor
that
had some
dunk
up and down moments.
Was just what you were talking about, that he's slithery.
Yeah, he just kind of gets places you don't think he should.
He figures out a way to get to it. Yeah, I think that was a good observation by you.
And then I do want to pat myself on the back for saying there's going to be a shot this year when Isaiah Collier only hits the backboard on a three.
Uh-huh.
His very first three-point attempt only hit the backboard. He overshot the rim by 2 feet.
Let it rain.
The backboard. He only took 3 shots, which was good. He did have 5 turnovers, which is his knock. He throws the ball all over the gym.
6 assists.
6 times, 5 turnovers, 3 steals. So it's just, you see it. You get why he was the number 1 recruit, and you get why he was the 29th pick in the draft.
One rattle the
Whatever
backboard
it was,
shot.
Yeah. He's got it, and he doesn't have it.
All right, stay tuned. We'll have more next. Jake and Ben on a Monday, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows. There's the video now, Ben, of the goalpost going into the river.
Yeah.
There in Nashville.
You know what we should do? We should throw these in the river.
Just throw them right in. Go for it.
We've run out of ideas, and we don't want to carry them any further.
Want to remind you to nominate the U Sports volunteer you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. I told the story over the weekend, speaking of goalposts being torn down, of where I was producing DJ and PK, and this probably was 2004, I guess. And the good doctor, Chris Hill, came in right after Utah beat BYU and tore down the goalpost. The good doctor came in studio and was hanging out with me in the producer's studio before jumping on the show, Ben. And it was so funny to talk to him, because what stands out in my mind is he wasn't excited about the Fiesta Bowl. He wasn't excited about the win over BYU. I mean, I'm sure he was, but he spent the whole time talking to me complaining about having to replace the goalposts. And I always looking into the collapsible goalpost technology and all that sort of stuff. And Utah's never had those goalposts come down now, Utah, if you've noticed. But I think it's funny. It was an interaction with him that stands out in my mind. He was like, yeah, man, that cost me whatever $1,000, and I've got to do this and this and that. And I was like, that's so funny. Such an AD kind of thing.
Yeah, that was my thought, too, was there's got to be either some kid there who knows how to unlatch the goalposts from whatever system holds them up, or there is a ton of damage to the field that's going to be a nightmare to replace.
Right, but they haven't won a big game in so long, they haven't had to worry about it. So now when they replace it, they're going to replace it probably with the collapsible ones that have been around for a while.
You did them a favor.
But I honestly think they should just tase everybody charging the field, and then they don't have to worry about it either way.
I know you don't like charging the field. I don't mind it, but I did have that thought watching the game was, as I mentioned, number 13, Malachi Moore, who's kind of a star he's the captain of Alabama. First of all, he had, what's the kid's name? Lavia?
Yeah, that catch.
He was smashing the quarterback's face on the ground after he picked up the first down that clinched the game. And then Ravia. And then he threw his mouthpiece and was stomping up and down, yelling at his teammates. And I thought, that's not the guy, a student who is inebriated and has not really been paying attention to the game and is just going to go and get in some player's face because they're being an idiot. Number 13 right now for Alabama is not the guy who you want to get in his face.
No.
Because he might kill you. He can punch you hard enough to could end your life.
And it might be justified.
And yeah, he's like having one of the worst moments of his life. Now, he needs to control it. He's playing football. He's not in a hospital room somewhere. Like, you're fine. This will be okay. But yeah, don't get in that guy's face. And by letting kids onto the field, you're kind of setting that up to be a disaster.
Totally asking for it.
Yeah.
LeGarrette Blount went after that Boise State player and then was trying to go after Boise State fans thereafter, if you remember. That was part of the outrage.
So I was glad nothing did happen, but I thought, I could see how this could really turn sour.
Like, this didn't necessarily turn sour, but one of those times where Utah beat BYU at Utah, it might have been the field storming 3 times. I don't really remember. All I remember is J.D. Falselev was playing, and he was kind of down on his knees, upset about the loss. And some fan got after him, and he yelled a bad word at the fan. And it was somewhat controversial in a young online social media world. But I remember talking about it the next day. It's like, I don't blame that guy.
Yeah.
Get out of his face.
Yeah.
You're in his space.
Correct.
He's not in your space. You're in his space. And he just lost an emotional game. Leave him alone.
I think that is something that has to be remembered, which you just can't expect to regulate. You know, if I walk on the court after a Jazz game, well, I've been doing this for a long enough time that I recognize I constantly kind of have to be aware, are players still coming off the floor? Are referees coming off the floor? I am in their space. So I need to make sure I'm not just out of the way, but unseen when they are getting through. And the 20-year-old who's been drinking since 6:30 in the morning is not going to be aware of that type of space, or that just because they go to that college, they don't own that. They don't own that 50-yard line.
You quite literally, and I'm sure people have, made the argument for trespassing, which is indeed illegal. But yeah, they should get security together and say, we're going to get some stick work in tonight.
Work on a baton.
We're going to get some of that good practice.
By the way, Vanderbilt was fined $100,000 for the goalpost being torn down, and they're auctioning off pieces of this goalpost.
Yeah,
I'm assuming they helped make up for that fine.
They fished it out of the river. There is video of that too.
Do you guys want to guess on how much a 4-inch section of this goalpost is going for at the auction?
I saw this number, so I won't guess.
I don't know. It's got to be a few $100, right?
$1,000.
Really?
$1,005 for a 4-inch section.
Yeah.
An 8-inch section is going for $4,035.
I bet you the donations roll in after a game like that. The excitement around that type of win that is what's funny is it doesn't alter the program long term. It's memorable. It's not going to change the direction of Vanderbilt football. In fact, if it's going to do anything, it's going to put the coach on the map. He's the former defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, right? And he will just get a better job somewhere else because no one's going to stay at Vanderbilt.
Likely no. Can I say, though, I didn't think Kalen DeBoer was a great hire for Alabama for a variety of reasons. And we'll see. I mean, it's only his, 5th game, 4th game? But Nick Saban didn't lose games like that.
No.
And you know what? Nick Saban didn't have players behave like your example earlier there in the segment. That didn't happen. You imagine if that happened with Nick Saban? No. And I think that, he had a very specific strategy that was successful at Alabama. Maybe it's easier to win at Alabama than other places, but I don't know if DeBoer is the guy.
It'll take a while.
I wouldn't want to be the guy to replace Nick Saban. I get it why you can't turn that job down, but I think he might be set up for failure at the outset.
He's going to have to take some lumps before he figures it out. And this was a good one.
But Nick Saban never lost to Vandy.
No. He did lose to Georgia, which DeBoer didn't. But no, you didn't see a lot of Saban losing to Vandy games.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, you literally did not.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Stay tuned. We'll have more Jake and Ben coming up next. Football is back this week.
Yeah.
Excited about it. We'll break down coming up. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Want to remind you that Ethan Millard with Teton Wealth will be live in studio with Hans and Scotty today to help you with your retirement plan. Tune in or visit retireteton.com. What was the other one there, Christian? Oh, yes. 1st and 12. Can't miss it on Sundays, 10 to noon. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Store. Get the freshest fruits and vegetables from local farms and get your favorite local brands. Macy's, happy shopping.
Where do you think the anxiety level is for Utah fans right now? Not based on Isaac Wilson. I don't really want to talk about Isaac Wilson. We'll let you hear from Kyle Whittingham coming up here in 20 minutes, hopefully from the press conference. But based solely on their schedule, that their wins now are over a bad Baylor team, Southern Illinois, with all due respect to Southern Illinois, even the head coach came on our show and said, we know what this is. Utah State, who's dreadful, and Oklahoma State, who just got smashed at home by West Virginia. Oklahoma State stinks. They're legitimately they might not make a bowl game. That win that was the feather in Utah's cap, that was carrying Utah fans, even with a loss to Arizona, was like, well, at least you did this. Does not look like a win that's notable at all. There's got to be some real anxiety, and it's multiplied by BYU having the success it's had and having 2 wins over ranked opponents.
Yeah. I mean, Arizona losing at home to Texas Tech wasn't great.
Yeah, and then Arizona gets beat up by Texas Tech. Ugh.
Except for what has fundamentally changed about Utah. I think they had a game against Arizona where they honestly beat themselves. I told you last week, my opinion was that it wasn't Arizona who won that game. It was Utah who lost that game for a variety of reasons. So I didn't come away from that game thinking Arizona was the best team in town. I still think Noah Fafita is really good. And despite his interceptions, he still had 300 yards against Texas Tech. I mean, I do think that. But Arizona's always been kind of on the softer side of things and isn't necessarily...
It was surprising Utah couldn't exploit that against Noah Fafita because he's been extremely turnover prone this year.
It was shocking. So I still think, though, that Utah's defense is good. People like Steve Bartle, and I'm coming around and have agreed that Bernard is
he's a guy.
Is a guy. So if those 2 things remain true, lack of turnovers aside, I suppose, but if those 2 things remain true, why do you think Utah is fundamentally any different? I mean, they haven't been blowing out teams for 20 years now. It's how they win. So I don't know. I don't think I'm not picking Arizona State this week.
No, I think Utah's going to smash Arizona State. I
don't think they're going to smash them. They don't smash anybody.
Okay, I think they're going to handle Arizona State the way Utah handles teams. Technically it wasn't a blowout against Oklahoma State, but you look back and they were feeble across the board. Arizona State's going to look feeble across the board against Utah. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think passing is going to be really difficult, and Utah's going to be able to run the ball, milk the clock. It's going to be pretty lopsided in that, and the score will be within 10 points.
It's the blueprint.
It's the blueprint. And then look.
Right. And it's pretty unshakable. Despite, some random losses, it wins more than it loses. That's why you have to blame the loss on Utah, not credit Arizona.
I think that's fair.
Because if they stuck to the game plan and did what makes them successful, they win that game because they win those kinds of slop-fest games all the darn time. But they forgot to run the ball, and they thought they were down 30 instead of down 13 or whatever.
7.
It was. 7 at one point.
7 at halftime.
It didn't make any sense. And they bought into let's believe in the true freshman all of a sudden? Let him throw 40 times? What?
Yeah.
It's like the same. It's like it was alien Kyle Whittingham coaching the game. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
Bizarro wit. Yeah.
What's the deal? There's only one reason for Utah not being undefeated right now, and that's Utah itself, in my opinion. So if you're worried the coaching staff is going to go in and bungle another game, maybe. But if they remember that Bernard's a guy, and if the defense still stands up, has the defense showed you that it's got a major flaw?
I'm a little worried about how soft they were against the run against Arizona, and that I know that they were dedicated to making sure McMillan didn't go off and Burnett ended up going off the tight end. There are some question marks that they're going to have to shore up. And actually, Utah State moved the ball through the air a little bit as well. So there are some questions about Utah's passing defense that I have. I would suspect those get fixed.
I don't think it's a fundamental flaw. I mean, again, they're susceptible to a big play like anybody else. But limiting Fafita to less than 200 yards is pretty darn good. I get your point about the run defense, I guess, except for they always are good at run defense.
And yes, I suspect they will fix it with a bye week. I think you're right. I think this was a bit of a trap game for Utah against Arizona. They were coming off feeling really good about themselves against Oklahoma State. Arizona had not looked very good. And they thought, well, we're at home. It's 8 o'clock. We're going to roll. And they didn't roll. They got punched in the mouth, and they didn't stand up.
I know you don't want to talk about Isaac Wilson and Cam Rising because I'm sick of it too, but it's part of it.
Yeah, it's a big part of it.
It's part of it. It's the everything is up in the air. And as we talked about at great length last week, it's not fair to Isaac. It's not fair to Cam. It's not fair to the fans. It's not fair to the media. I guess it's not fair to the gamblers, even though I care about them. It's a distraction. It's a mess. You're making national headlines for all of the wrong reasons.
And I guarantee you this press conference is going to be all about Isaac Wilson and Cam Rising again.
And it's going to be the same crap.
Yep, it is. So we'll see if we can hear from Whit coming up in about 15 minutes here. The good news for Utah is you look at these next 3 games. I think, like we said, I think Utah's going to control the game against Arizona State. I think they're going to simplify the game plan and be fine. TCU just lost at home to Houston, who literally had not scored in 2 weeks. Houston had been blanked in back-to-back weeks. Now, Houston changed their quarterback and had a lot of success, and that was smart. TCU clearly wasn't prepared for it, but TCU's not very good. Obviously. They're 3-3 with that loss to Houston at home. And then Utah goes to Houston, and barring this quarterback, Zion Chris, having, being this revelation that they didn't recognize was actually a good player until week 4, week 5, I think Utah wins that game. So I think Utah does win the next 3 games and sets themselves up to be 6-1 going into the bowl game, or the rivalry game. And I don't know if BYU loses before that either.
I mean, BYU's stretch is much tougher.
Arizona's tougher, kind of.
Kind of.
Oklahoma State's awful. BYU's going to smash Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State looks like they're benching Alan Bowman. I would suspect he's done for the year.
He's already been benched, right?
He got benched in this last game. They went back to Rangel, the backup quarterback. And Central Florida just lost to Florida. They've lost back-to-back weeks in pretty horrendous fashion. So I don't know if those 3 games are what we're thinking. It is just setting up for an absolutely massive game coming up on November 9th.
That'd be the best thing for the league.
Yeah, it needs it. It needs Utah to be undefeated over the next 3 games, BYU to be undefeated overall, because if that happens, BYU is going to be the 7th-ranked team in the country, and Utah's going to be 9th.
I mean, that's what it needs.
Yeah.
But we'll see, because it's fluky. College football is fluky.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt
beat Alabama,
Yeah.
so either BYU or Utah could lose any of these games, but right now, these next 3 weeks are looking like a pretty sweet plum for...
It is ugly, though, that the Big 12 is basically eating itself. They need BYU to go undefeated. I mean, that was I think they were hoping that there would be an undefeated team in this league.
I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. BYU certainly BYU's their best hope.
If they beat Utah, they're in really good shape.
Iowa State's in fairly good shape. It's going to come down to their last 2 games, which is hard, at Utah on the 23rd and then home against Kansas State on the 30th. So going 2-0 there would be difficult. But until then, they have UCF, Texas Tech, both at home, at Kansas, home against Cincinnati. So
that should be 4 straight wins.
They should be undefeated going into Utah as well, which is crazy because if Utah were then to beat BYU, that would make that game.
Utah could have back-to-back top 10 opponents.
But you know what?
Utah would play Colorado and then Iowa
in between
State.
Them. How hilarious would that be if BYU beats Utah and then all of a sudden the Kook fans are all over the Utes trying to cheer for them to beat the Cyclones?
Yeah, right. So you're gonna need a little. You're not helping. BYU would be in the Big 12 title game.
No, but if you want a conference title, which used to mean something, or an outright regular season title, I guess. But man, that sets up for an interesting end of the year. Thanks to Iowa State with 2 really good teams to close it, and should be undefeated going into it unless they really stub their toe. Man, what is it? 3 out of their next 4 are at home too
for Iowa State.
Iowa State. Yeah, they're in really good shape.
It's pretty funny how quickly this has changed about who we're focusing on here in the Big 12. And Utah's got to make sure that they guarantee that they're in that conversation again. I think they're going to be solid over the next 3 weeks. You've got to start Friday night by beating Oklahoma or by beating Arizona State on the road and being ready to go. But
all right, you brought this back to Utah fans feeling insecure about their team going forward. Well, last time BYU beat Utah, what was the reason? Kyle Whittingham admitted the reason in the press conference after. They got torn apart at the line of scrimmage by BYU, like on both sides of the ball, but specifically Utah's offensive line lost that battle. If there is concern, if it comes down to Utah v. BYU, that would be something that I think you should look at. I think the offensive line really underperformed against Arizona. I don't think we've seen the offensive line be that great so far.
Agreed.
And if they lose that battle and Utah can't move the ball at all against BYU, I don't know. Is it another 3-0 game like we were talking about? In that case, it can go anybody's way. So I think that's the issue.
We've got a fascinating next 3 weeks. In the Big 12, for Utah and BYU overall, we've just got a lot of excitement coming up. And BYU's games are more noteworthy than Utah's opponents. I don't know if they're going to be better games.
I think BYU should be ranked higher than 14th.
Yeah, they should. Absolutely.
Based on what they've done, which is actually what the AP voters are supposed to take into account. What has happened so far? 2 wins over top 20 teams is pretty good.
And there's nothing about BYU that looks fluky at all.
Not at the moment.
No, these are all really good wins.
But see, BYU, the concern there is, do they continue to have enough offense to win? Truly. Do they have enough offense to get that 3 points in the 3-0 shootout with the Utes that's coming up?
Well, we'll see how healthy the running back room is coming out of this bye week, and if they get any bodies back and how comfortable they are there. They've scored 41 points, 18 points, 34 points, 38 points, 34 points. It's not bad by any means. They'll take BYU in the mid-30s. With that defense, they're going to win a lot of games. In fact, they might go undefeated if they keep scoring in the 30s with what they're able to do on the other side of the ball.
Very interesting.
Yep.
But if the playoff were to start today, it'd only be one Big 12 team.
Of the 12? Oh, yeah, because of where the rankings are right now. You mean if they fall?
And I wonder if it turns out that way. It would get very Pac-12-esque.
As long as they don't chew each other up at the end, you do need one team to basically escape unscathed, and then one loss team to get into the Big 12 title game, and then whatever happens, I think you have 2 in.
Yeah, Utah losing to BYU and then beating Iowa State is like worst-case scenario for everybody.
Yeah. Because a 2-loss Big 12 team might not get in.
I'd take the might out of that. I mean, unless that second loss came in the conference title game, I'd say 2-loss team not getting in.
Unless somebody randomly steals. Oh, no, it's probably better. Like, you don't want someone to steal an ACC bid, which is now we're getting to almost like the NCAA bubble, where, you win the ACC, you get that automatic bye. You want Miami to win, and you want them to win out and get that ACC bye, and Clemson have 2 losses or 3 losses by that point and fall out completely because they're sitting at number 10.
I honestly don't think that either league's getting 2 teams in. Well, there's not some guaranteed at-large spot for any of those leagues. Look at the rankings right now, Ben. Here,
I've got them. Yeah,
bring them up in front of you. Who's sitting in front of BYU, for example? I heard DJ
LSU.
and PK doing this. All rep teams. LSU, keep going.
Notre Dame. Iowa State, not so much rep. They're 5-0. Clemson. Tennessee still ahead of you. Alabama still ahead of you. Miami, Georgia, all still ahead of you.
All rep teams. That means that all those teams would still get in front of you with 2 losses.
And most of those teams already have a loss.
You're going to the back of the line. The Lane Train and Ole Miss is going to get, any of those teams are going to get the benefit of the doubt over the ACC and over the Big 12.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And even throw in a team like Indiana or something like that. Like the Big 10 will cry about it and they'll get an extra, as opposed to, that's my fear anyway.
Yeah, I could see it.
We watched it happen with the Pac-12 over and over again. Their champ would constantly have like 1 or 2 losses and constantly be left out.
Yeah.
Because they're not part of the mighty Southeastern Conference, Ben. Well, way to go. Vandy just guaranteed themselves a spot in the playoff.
Then I guess you better win the conference title.
Vandy could lose out, and they're still going to get in.
Still going to make it. You better win the conference title if you want to punch your ticket.
All right, we'll have more college football. We'll see if we can't get you Witt's press conference coming up next. Stay tuned. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake and Ben want to remind you to join Hans and Scotty Wednesday from 1 to 3 for the Cougar Preview Show, brought to you by Beehive Meals, proud meal partner for BYU Athletics. Check it out. What's your number 1 Rolling Stones song?
Oh, Wild Horses?
All right.
Jumpin' Jack Flash? Street Fight? Might be Street Fighting Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
They got a lot. They got a lot you can go to.
Angie?
There you go.
Personal.
Yeah. Yeah, right. All right. Just checking.
I got a lot. I mean,
there's not a wrong answer.
I wish there was more of a deep dive there. But what's their song? What's their album? 40 hits, whatever it was.
40 licks.
40 licks. It's like, yeah, you had 40 number 1 tracks. So there's a lot to choose
Not
from.
a bad run.
There's a lot to choose from.
Not a bad run. And Mick and Keith still living somehow.
Still kicking it. Yeah.
I'll tell you, when I saw him in the mid-2000s, I was like, I can't believe this old man can move like that.
Yeah, he's still
going.
Still out
that
there.
was like 2005.
He should run for president. He'd be electric. He's not from here. You have a favorite?
No. Like I always liked, you can't always get what you want.
Painted Black.
Painted Black is great. Yeah. No, that was what I'm saying. There isn't really a wrong answer there. All right. It's time for you to hear from Coach Whitt in his weekly press conference.
All right. First of all, bye week came at a really good time for us. Gave us a chance to regroup a little bit and get some guys, some of the bumps and bruises that have accumulated healed up. We've been going since August 1st, so over 2 months straight without any sort of a break. So it's good for these guys to get a break. I think we, as we do every year, try to strike a good balance with getting some practice in, but at the same time giving them some downtime to refresh. So Arizona State road trip this week. They're playing well, 4-1. Impressed with a lot of things about their football team. They're much more productive offensively this year than they were able to be last year. The tailback is a tough, hard-nosed guy. Some good receivers. Just very productive on offense. Quarterback is definitely a dual threat. So we got our work cut out for us, and it's going to be hot, which is nothing new to us. We've had a few hot games this year, and so I think 97 at kick is what it's projected to be. But same for both teams, just like always. So we'll just be able to, or have to handle that, and that's where we're at. So questions. Justin, I should say. Question.
Okay. In regards to the Arizona University game, in the first quarter, it was 4th down with 2 yards to go. You decided to go for the first down twice instead of kicking the field goal. It is my belief that if you would have kicked said field goals, you could have kept the momentum and could have potentially won the game. But you follow the same protocol this week, and you're not a fan of the analytics.
You're not a fan of analytics, so you don't believe in science, is what you're trying to say. There's an argument for that, but the analytics was heavily in favor of going for it in those situations. I've said before, we are pretty tuned into the analytics. It's not absolute for us, and if we have a different feel, then we'll go a different direction. But when it's that heavily skewed to going for it, field goals, obviously touchdowns are worth more than double a field goal, and so if you end up kicking field goals a bunch, you don't win many games. And so in hindsight, if I knew we weren't going to get it on 4th down, we would have kicked, but the strategy and the definite statistical recommendation was to go for it. So unfortunately, we were 0 for 4th down in that game, where we had been really good the week before. We were 4 for 5 the week before at Okie State, so it was a complete reversal of that. But there's some old school guys, apparently you're one of them, that would like to kick the field. Okay. Thank you for that question, Justin, by the way. Appreciate it.
A week ago, you said Cam Ryan will play as soon as he gets the go-ahead. Is that go-ahead from the medical staff or the coaching staff?
Medical staff, without any other input. I mean, it's all, we're following the recommendations. He is following the recommendations as well as from the doctors, and we'll see what happens this week. But there's a chance, I can tell you that, and it's still early in the week, but we're crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, as is Cam. And so we're just seeing how things play out. But again, we follow all the medical recommendations. We're not going to, I'm not a doctor. Cam's not a doctor. We're not going to go against that. So that's where we're at.
Kyle, I'm just curious, what is, I guess, your strategy behind how you approach the injury report? And to kind of to follow up on that, the Big Ten and the SEC, they have mandated injury reports. Would you be in support if the Big 12 were to go in that direction?
100%. But since there is no mandate, why would you tip your hand in any way, shape, or form with injuries? It doesn't make any sense to give the opponent any more knowledge than they have. And so that's the only reason. It's no other reason other than a competitive advantage. Even though it might be just slight, it's still an advantage. The less they know, the more we know. That type of deal. But yeah, I would support that if the Big 12 were to come out and say, hey, you need to disclose and have an injury report. But I don't think it should be conference to conference. Again, I think P4 should all operate under the same guidelines, the same rules, regulations. And right now, it's all over the place. And so I would be in favor of whoever would make that call for all P4 conferences to be aligned and have a consistent way of handling and dealing with injuries. So that's where I'm at.
If a player is medically cleared, but he's not 100%, what's your philosophy on playing him if that player isn't 100%, but whatever percent he is, gives you a better chance to win than 100% of the backup? You see what I'm saying?
You answered your own question, PK. Exactly. That's exactly the formula. It's who gives you the best chance to win. Is an 80% Cam Rising more of an opportunity to win than 100% Isaac Wilson? And so that's a coach's decision, a coach's call, and it's just you're not going to be right all the time, but that's the exact criteria we use. And first of all, you don't want to expose the kid to furthering the injury, but you wouldn't get clearance if you didn't, if that was the case. So it would be exactly what you just said. Whoever that particular week gives us the best chance to win, given the physical circumstances, that would be the guy.
Cam is obviously your guy, but does there come a point in the season where if Cam isn't available, that you have to look to the future and just turn it over to us just to say that this is what it is, or how long do you wait?
Yeah, that's a good question, and yeah, there is a point. I'm not going to pin ourselves down to an exact specific time, but as things progress, and then also the conference race, where are you in the conference race? There's some things that enter into it, but it certainly could come to that point, but we're not there yet.
And to follow up, with Isaac, where does he need to make those next steps each week, especially in the zone, or what are you seeing that needs to improve?
I would say the entire his entire game just needs to continue to get tighter and better. Cut down on the interceptions. First of all, we've had some interceptions along the way, but there's not any one glaring area we can say, boy, he's really lacking in this or that. It's just he's a freshman, a true freshman, and there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be mistakes made that you're going to have to live with. And as long as the more reps he accrues and the more time he gets, playing time, the less those mistakes show up, and we're trending in the right direction. That's really what you're looking for.
To kind of piggyback off of that question, given Isaac's struggles with turnovers, is there, if the keys do have to get handed over to him at some point, is there going to be a consideration to maybe get Brandon Rose or Sam Heward more reps, given the struggles that the offense has had without Cam under Isaac?
Not right now. Right now, Isaac is the guy, and if Cam becomes the guy again, then Isaac becomes the clear-cut number two. And again, if Isaac continues to play and doesn't trend in the right direction, then just what you said may come into play. But right now, we don't feel that's in play at this point.
Bernard's had a fantastic season, but what have you seen from the other running backs lately, and how do you get more production out of that?
Yeah, Micaiah has been the bell cow. He's been RB1. He's played himself into that role. He was not in that role initially at the beginning of the season. We're going to let things sort themselves out, which they have, and he is the guy that's getting the vast majority of the carries. The other backs, Mike Mitchell, just a freshman, still learning, but he's added some value to that room and had some good carries this season. Dijon Stanley's done the same thing, although he's more of a limited package guy. Charlie Vincent's contributed. Jalen Glover is a guy that is in the room as well that you may see start to get more time. But Micaiah is the number one guy, and his play has been outstanding, and so that's why he has got the vast majority of the carries.
Bye weeks are important for the players to recoup and rest. For coaches, how much does it help you guys to reset schematically, personnel-wise, just assessing your team?
It gives us a good opportunity to evaluate everything. But there's a lot of recruiting going on as well during the bye week, so it's not just football. Our coaches were on the road for half the bye week, and recruiting never stops. You're doing some form of recruiting every single day, and so when you have a bye week, it lets you physically get off campus and go watch players and evaluate, and so that was going on. But the being able to again self-evaluate and help make personnel decisions going forward, all that type of stuff bye week is a good time to get that done.
Given that Arizona ran for more than 5 yards a carry and over 50 yards, how do you challenge your defense? How do you talk to them in the film room and kind of set the stage? You don't want to go against a team like some of the balls pretty fast.
Yeah, well, just challenge them just like that. Say, if we can stop the run, then we got a good chance of winning, and we did not do a good job against Arizona. We'd done a pretty good job all season up until that game. Well, all season, what was it, 4 games? But that'll be the key this week. They're a run-heavy team. They're well over 200 yards a game rushing, and if we're as non-effective as we were in the Arizona game, it's going to be a long night. And so that is the big challenge for our defense is to stud up and become what we know we can be against the run.
Obviously, you walked into the season kind of because there was rumors floating that Cam could potentially play an 8th year of college football. Given his injury status, is that a possibility if he has to shut down for the rest of the season, that he could potentially come back for an 8th year of college football?
You know what? I couldn't say for sure. That's a compliance question. But if it does come to that point, that's something we would thoroughly have the answer to and research. But haven't even really given that any thought because we're just hopefully going to get him back sooner rather than later. So, and I know he wants to play. He wants to play badly.
With the way that the schedule has been set up, you have this week, next week, and the week after, 3 games, and then another bye week. How crucial is this stretch of the schedule for you guys?
Well, it's very crucial. I mean, we got our backs to the wall in a lot of respects right now. I mean, you look at the standings in the Big 12, and there's 2 or 3 teams with 3 losses that are essentially out of it. I mean, I don't see how that any way that they can, I guess I shouldn't say there's no way, but it's very, very unlikely that they're going to have an opportunity to be in the championship game. Then the 2 lost teams have a somewhat of a chance, and everyone with 1 loss or less is still right in the thick of it. But every week we got to get back on track. We didn't play well against Arizona. You can be a good football team and not play well and get your butt handed to you. Look at Alabama. You telling me that Vanderbilt has even close to the personnel that Alabama has? There's no way. I mean, that Minnesota has even close to the personnel that USC has. And so that there's illustrations all over the place where it doesn't matter. Well, it matters, but you can be a really good football team, but if you don't perform and execute, you're going to get beat. And so where we are right now, we can't look past Arizona State. Yeah, there is 3 games and then a bye, but it's all focused on Arizona State, and this is an important stretch, and it's we gotta get the ship turned back around because it was a very disappointing loss against Arizona. The quarterback played well again, Fafita. The receiver's terrific. I don't want to diminish what they accomplished, but we did not play well.
Obviously, you like to have earlier games. I think you said you wanted 4 a.m. games if you could.
Sure, let's go. Yeah.
But when you have these late games, a couple weeks ago with the Arizona game, now you get this game with Arizona State. How do you keep guys, or what do you do as a team to kind of help them kind of stay in the mode and not let the day just kind of get away from them?
Good question. On game day, when it is a late kick, we have, first of all, meetings. There's some short, not extensive, but short offense, defensive meetings, walk through. We have a flex period where they go and stretch out and stay loose. We got a nap period, a designated nap block of time. There's 3 meals that day. You got breakfast, lunch, and the pregame meal later on. And so we find a way to keep them occupied, but make sure they have enough time just to rest and relax and get themselves ready for the game. And it'll be important this week to hydrate. I mean, obviously that'll be part of it. And so pushing fluids on game day as well as all week long, but that's a big part of it.
Kind of to shift focus to the red zone issues that you guys have had for the past 2 weeks. How much of that is not having Cam in the lineup versus just personnel and schematic struggles?
Yeah, Cam's very good in the red zone historically, and so that's a part of it. And we're about 20% off where we need to be. It's not like we just absolutely are horrible. We're at 50%, which isn't good by any means, but 70% is our target. And if we can be 70% in the red zone, which we have been several years, then that's good production. And Cam would certainly, an experienced guy like him that's got as much accrued football time, he's going to be very adept at functioning in the red zone.
Final question.
Sam Levitt was someone you guys looked at in the transfer portal. What stood out in that time, and what challenges does he pose to the defense?
His athleticism. He's a true dual threat, as I mentioned earlier. He's doing a good job with the QB run game for him. He's still really young, and so his development is still ahead of him. His efficiency rating right now is about 133 throwing the ball, so got some work to do there. But he's doing a really good job of doing what they're asking him to do, and they're doing a really good job of making sure the offense is tailored to his skill set. And he's, like I said, a very capable runner. He's a tough kid. We liked everything about him. We thought he could be a terrific safety as well, or linebacker. I mean, he's one of those QBs that could play 2 or 3 other spots, and he's so athletic, like a Chase Hansen type of a guy. Yeah.
There's Kyle Whittingham, his weekly press conference, and yep, we have no idea if Cam Rising's going to play.
Yeah, same as last week or 2 weeks ago. It's the exact same thing.
Same as last year.
It would have been more helpful for everyone had they just said, we're not talking about Cam until he's playing. Just not going to talk about it.
Who?
Not going to talk.
Yeah.
Sorry, we don't know.
Stay tuned.
No answer.
Wrap it up. Jake and Ben next. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255.
It's official. Shams is going to ESPN.
What a shock.
He starts going on Armpit Show 6 months ago, and all of a sudden he's the face of ESPN.
What a surprise.
No shock.
Want to remind you can win lunch from KSL, the KSL Sports Zone at Cafe Rio on Taco Tuesday. Listen every Tuesday for your chance to win a $20 gift card. Learn more about Taco Tuesday and the great deals available every week at CafeRio.com. So Shams is taking the gig. Not surprised.
He's taking the gig. You look back again, he was going on Armpit Show instead of Woj, and everyone's like, why is he going on? Why is the competitor going on the biggest ESPN show right now? It's because this groundwork has been being laid for a year now. Woj retires, steps away. I'm curious now if there's more to this story than we think.
Oh, yeah. Shams and Armpit pushed him out, for sure.
So Woj steps away.
And LeBron probably, too.
And Zach Lowe gets fired because clearly ESPN is saying that the best response, the best click traffic they get is based on instant breaking news in the NBA. Those Woj bombs that used to be, or ShamWows as they like to call them, that's what drives traffic, not actual analysis like you were getting from Zach Lowe. So better to just pay one guy like Shams, especially once Woj is out of the way, and then it's all monopolized. There's only one place now where people are going to go to get breaking news in the NBA, and it's going to be Shams, and they don't really care about the analysis. So
Hanson, Scotty G are coming up next. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks,
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.